What's going on, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here, and today I'm back with another episode of roasting resumes on r/EngineeringResumes on Reddit. So if you're interested in this kind of content where I go into engineering resumes and kind of talk about some tips and tricks that have helped me throughout my career, as well as hopefully ways that these specific resumes we're looking at can improve, then this is definitely the series and channel for you. I'm the Unhinged Engineer. I make professional development content for other young engineers like myself who are trying to figure out how to navigate this crazy professional world we live in. So if you're interested in tips on how to do that from somebody going through it at the same time as you, not 20 years ago, then this is definitely a channel for you. But you guys know the drill. You know what this series is all about. Today is also going to be all success stories. So these are all resumes that got people the outcomes they were looking for. So regardless of what I say or how they critique them in any way, at the end of the day, they got the outcome that they wanted. So shout out to them, congratulations. And yeah, let's get right into it. So starting off with this first resume, a couple of these resumes actually specify what the outcome they got was, but this one just kind of generally said, hey, I got a job offer. First thing I want to highlight here is I would generally put skills down at the bottom. I just think when you lead with skills, you're asking them to kind of take a leap of faith and assume that the skills you enumerate are ones you actually have. But if you show these skills throughout your actual work experience bullets and then kind of list them all at the bottom, now you've got that credibility. Like, you're really just summarizing what you already talked about. So at the end of the day, the content could be the same and you could demonstrate all of the skills, but I think they're more likely to kind of just gloss over it and not take your word for the skills you lay out if you don't put it at the bottom. So that's a piece of advice I would have right off the bat. Moving on into your experience. Okay, it seems like you have one main experience here, which is totally cool. This is an eco car project. Okay, I've heard a lot about these. These are very well written bullets for sure. Yeah, I don't think they follow the XYZ method that we want to in general, but I think in something like this where it's kind of a competition, that's honestly okay. Like, you really just lay out a ton of stuff that you've done and enumerate it really, really well and really precisely. So I don't really care that you don't follow that did this, using this, resulting in that. Like, I think these are great, just kind of summaries of what looks like a ton of work. The only nit I would say is these systems here, I think probably are a lot more technically complex than the names you have for the systems actually indicate. So I would maybe try to flesh that out a little bit more and not just use the names you had for the subsystems likely throughout the course of this competition. Because something tells me that these algorithms were actually pretty intense. And so you want to make that clear, which just listing them by name kind of doesn't. So that's obviously nit. You clearly show that you did a lot of work in terms of integrating it with other systems and data sources, doing different forms of validation. This is a very, very solid work experience section. And this just goes to show, like, this person only has one work experience in here, and they do a great job. This is what, 6 bullets, each of which are 2 lines, and each of which have a lot of meat to them. So looking at projects, yeah, nothing more to say here. I think these do follow the XYZ method more. Like this one down here especially, you're starting to quantify things a bit more. Yeah, and these are all very solid projects. It is very clear from these experiences here that you're an electrical engineer and you know what you're doing. So yeah, I think this is a very solid resume. I don't really have a ton of nits. This is great. And I forgot to mention in the beginning that the format is solid as well. No complaints there. So let's keep going. Enough said. So this next person said that they got a job working in AI data centers, which is what they were looking for. So yeah, that's very cool. Okay, so first thing, I don't actually see education anywhere. Maybe they didn't go to college? I haven't actually seen a resume with no education section in my travels here. But I think regardless of whether you have an education section, I would probably stand by my advice to move skills down to the bottom, just for the reasons I said earlier. Only thing I would say in terms of formatting, well, 2 things. I also would avoid using blue. People do that. I honestly don't know why. I would just keep everything black. You never know how colors are going to look depending on somebody else's like monitor or what software they pull it up, and it's a stupid nit, but in general, I'd strictly stay on, black and white. But the bigger one I would say is you have a lot of space on the sides, and honestly this font seems really small. Even up here, you got a lot of space up here too. I think you could afford to make the font a bit larger. Yeah, and I would advise doing that because it's honestly hurt my eyeballs a little bit. Well, when I squint and look at the bullets, they all look very good. You've got good quantification in here. A couple of these are multi-sentence, which I generally try to avoid, but isn't really a hard and fast rule. It just makes it kind of easier to read if everything's 1 sentence. But I have a couple bullets on my resume, I think, that are technically more than 1 sentence, or like have a semicolon. So this will lead to a second page. Maybe I missed the second page. Sorry about that if I did. Yeah, even if it does lead to a second page, I would move the heading down so it's with the content there. Yeah, I think your content is really strong. I would just try to fix up the formatting a little bit. It's a little bit all over the place, but the content itself is really great. And also one thing I would add to clean it up a little bit, you are very clearly a person based in Sydney, Australia. I don't feel like you really need to list it everywhere. But in general, people list their location, so I'm not gonna give you grief for doing that. But I'm just saying, considering you're very clearly local to Sydney, I don't feel like it's as necessary. I also, in general, like to move this stuff over here because you want things to look kind of symmetric, which it doesn't have to be a ton. Like this person just has their dates here. Let's actually take a peek at the next one. Yeah, like they just pretty much have like dates. Like I think just putting a little bit more of that header of each section on the right hand side helps to balance the resume a bit more, so it looks less like it's leaning all the way to the left. But yeah, overall, like I said, I think your content's really solid. I would just try to clean up the formatting a little bit, and my advice is always just use a very standard format like Jake's resume template or some of the other ones we talked about in the series. Like there's nothing wrong with them, they're standard for a reason. So okay, next one. Last one, actually. So this is a person who got a job at NVIDIA. So congratulations. Or I guess an internship at NVIDIA. Also congratulations. But let's take a look. Okay, another person who did Formula SAE. We had someone who did that in the last episode. One thing I would do is potentially I would move the company down and then move the location over here. So like the way Jake's resume template does it and the way I do it is title, company, and then you've got dates and location. Like that's the way I generally like it. It keeps things symmetric. I would advise using that for each header: title, dates, company, location. Obviously, again, not a huge nit. I like this last bullet. It's cool. These are great bullets in here. You're demonstrating an ability to jump between kind of embedded stuff and also application level development, which is very impressive and kind of rare for people to be able to span the stack that way. And all these bullets are great. And I'm curious what this platform was. But anyway, nice projects too. Especially this operating system. That's always a good one. Something I've always wanted to do. And I like that your project bullets are a little bit less meaty than the work experience. I think you're making good use of real estate here. And the skills is standard. Yeah, the hard part with these success stories is all these resumes are great. So it's hard to knit. But I think, hopefully you learn as much from the good things these resumes are doing as you would from some of the not so good things other resumes I've reviewed in the past have done. And like I said, every resume has an opportunity to prove. This one's not different. But congrats on your internship. Well done. Well deserved. Okay, I think that's it for this episode. So if you enjoyed this episode of Roasting Resumes on Reddit, this is definitely the channel for you. Like I said, I make professional development content for other engineers trying to figure out how to navigate the career space. This is just one of several different types of content that I make. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, especially from somebody who's going through it at the same time as you, then this is definitely a channel you would like. So like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.